Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Amnesty International has described the 2-month siege in Gaza as genocide in action. Israel is, according to experts, deliberately creating conditions that could lead to the physical destruction of the Palestinian people, a pattern many may argue amounts to genocide. As a signatory to the Genocide Convention, does the Minister agree that the UK has a legal duty to act when there is a risk of genocide?
It's like the world's turning up the heat on Netanyahu, and Meloni's voice is one you wouldn't expect to hear so loudly. The guy's getting hit from all sides. First, his old buddy Donald Trump, who's been Israel's biggest cheerleader, seems to be cooling off on blindly backing Netanyahu's brutal campaign in Gaza.
We've got to be good to Gaza. We're going to take care of that. There's a very big need for medicine, food and medicine, and we're taking care of it.
In terms of like opening up more access points?
We're pushing people very hard.
Pushing the Israelis?
We are.
To open up more access
very hard to get food and medicine.
Then you've got French President Emmanuel Macron, who's been clashing with him over getting food and aid to starving Palestinians. Netanyahu even went as far as calling Macron a terrorist sympathizer for pushing humanitarian deliveries, which is wild when you see the nightmare unfolding in Gaza. Over 52,000 Palestinians dead, mostly civilians, and entire cities reduced to rubble. Observers are stunned, not just by the humanitarian disaster, but by how European leaders, usually quiet on Israel, are starting to speak up. And now, Italy's jumping in, with Meloni saying she's not here to watch Gaza get destroyed.
Il n'y a pas de médicaments. On ne peut plus sortir les blessés. Les docteurs ne peuvent plus y aller. Et je veux saluer le travail des humanitaires que j'ai vu à la Riche, les Médecins sans frontières, toutes nos ONG avec le centre de crise du Quai. Ce qu'il fait, c'est une honte. C'est une honte. Et donc, nous, on doit se battre absolument pour d'abord rouvrir. Parce que ce sont des vies. Ensuite, on doit se battre pour démilitariser le Hamas, libérer les otages et construire une solution politique. Le seul moyen d'y arriver, c'est qu'il y ait un État de Palestine, un État d'Israël qui vivent côte à côte, se reconnaissant mutuellement et reconnaissant le droit de chacun de vivre ensemble.
Let's break this down and see what's driving her stance. So, Meloni's this right-wing leader from the Brothers of Italy party, a group with deep nationalist roots. When she became Prime Minister in 2022, she was all about supporting Israel, like many Western leaders who see it as a key Middle East ally. Back in 2023, she had a chat with Netanyahu and was like, "Hey, I get that you are claiming to defend Israel after the Palestinian counteroffensive, but keep it within international law and let aid flow to Gaza." It was a standard diplomatic move back your ally, but remind them to play nice. Fast forward, though, and Israel's campaign has gone way beyond defense. We're talking neighborhoods wiped out, hospitals bombed, and famine creeping in, with Gaza's health authorities reporting those 52,000 deaths, mostly women and kids. That kind of devastation has pushed Meloni to change her tune. She's not staying on the sidelines anymore, where European countries like Italy usually sit when it comes to Israel's actions in Palestine. Instead, she's calling the situation in Gaza unjustifiable and signaling she's done with Netanyahu's approach. Meloni was openly calling the humanitarian situation in Gaza dramatic and unjustifiable. During a parliamentary session, she described her conversations with Netanyahu as often difficult, revealing a growing frustration with his hardline approach. She didn't mince words, urging Israel to respect international law and humanitarian principles, especially as reports of starvation and blocked aid convoys piled up. This was a big deal. Meloni, a conservative who's usually cozy with pro-Israel policies, was publicly distancing herself from Netanyahu's actions. She's been clear that she doesn't agree with Israel's recent proposals, like the plan to displace Palestinians to southern Gaza or indefinitely occupy the territory. These moves, backed by Netanyahu's far-right coalition, have drawn accusations of ethnic cleansing, and Meloni's refusal to endorse them shows she's wary of being associated with such extremism. It's like she's saying, look, I get that you're fighting Hamas, but this level of devastation isn't defensible.
Di una situazione umanitaria a Gaza che non ho difficoltà a definire sempre più drammatica e ingiustificabile. Non abbiamo condiviso diverse scelte, non condividiamo le recenti proposte del governo israeliano e non abbiamo mancato di dirlo ai nostri interlocutori, consapevoli come siamo, però, che non è stato Israele a iniziare le ostilità e che c'era un disegno, come ho detto varie volte, alla base dei disumani attacchi di Hamas, della crudeltà rivolta contro gli ostaggi. Quel disegno era un disegno che puntava all'isolamento e questo non può non farci riflettere su quanto sarebbe pericoloso assecondare il disegno dei terroristi che non si sono fatti scrupoli a sacrificare la vita sia di israeliani che di palestinesi pur di perseguire i propri scopi. Continueremo a impegnarci per una cessazione permanente delle ostilità. In questo quadro credo che non ci debbano essere da parte nostra ambiguità nel pretendere che Hamas rilasci immediatamente gli ostaggi, deponga le armi, nel dire che non c'è spazio per una presenza di Hamas nel futuro della striscia in un futuro Stato palestinese. E ribadisco quanto già detto al Senato, sono convinta, sulla base delle numerose conversazioni che ho avuto in questi mesi con i leader della regione, che si possa lavorare a un quadro politico e di sicurezza regionale capace di porre fine al conflitto, aprire la strada a un processo che conduca alla soluzione dei due Stati. E resto convinta che per farlo occorra partire dal piano di ricostruzione proposto dai paesi arabi. È verso questo obiettivo che il governo continua a impegnarsi, lavorando con i leader della regione, con i nostri partner europei, con gli Stati Uniti.
What's interesting is how Meloni's critique fits into her broader foreign policy. She's not some anti-Israel firebrand. She's pragmatic. Italy suspended new arms exports to Israel after October 2023, a move she's boasted about as stricter than other European nations. This wasn't a full embargo. Existing contracts likely continued, but it sent a signal. Compare that to her willingness to sign defense deals with Turkey's Erdogan, who's openly called Palestine resistance liberators, and you see her trying to navigate a messy geopolitical landscape. She's also pushed for a two-state solution, something Netanyahu has rejected outright. Back in January 2024, she said Italy would always support an independent Palestinian state, a position that put her at odds with Netanyahu's vision of permanent Israeli control over Gaza. It's like she's trying to thread the needle, keeping Israel as an ally, but refusing to give Netanyahu a blank check for his war machine. Now let's talk about why Meloni's stance matters. The war in Gaza, driven by Netanyahu's refusal to negotiate a lasting ceasefire, has become a global flashpoint. His coalition, propped up by ultra-nationalists like Bezalel Smotrich, who's talked about totally destroying Gaza, has doubled down on policies that many, including Meloni, see as reckless. Smotrich's vision of displacing Palestinians and resettling Gaza with Jewish settlers is the kind of extremist warmongering that's alienated even traditional allies. Meloni's public criticism, especially her recent call for an end to hostilities, shows she's responding to the growing outrage over Palestinian suffering. She's not boycotting Israel or recalling ambassadors, but she's made it clear she's not on board with Netanyahu's forever war. One thing to keep in mind is the pressure Meloni faces at home. Italian parliamentarians have pushed her to condemn Netanyahu more forcefully, even suggesting sanctions or recalling Israel's ambassador. She's resisted going that far, likely to preserve diplomatic ties and avoid alienating her conservative base, which includes pro-Israel factions. Instead, she's leaned on rhetoric about international law and humanitarian aid, which lets her critique Israel without burning bridges. It's a tightrope walk, but it's also a sign of how toxic Netanyahu's policies have become. Even a right-wing leader like Meloni can't fully defend them. She alleges that Palestinian counteroffensive started the conflict, which is wrong, but she's also said the response can't justify Gaza's descent into a humanitarian nightmare. Well, if you look at the history of the two nations, you would agree with me that Meloni has changed something, or at least is changing something about the blind obedience to the monstrous actions of Israel against Palestinians since the 1900s. You see, Italy and Israel kicked off formal diplomatic relations in 1949, not long after Israel's founding, which came at the expense of Palestinian displacement during the Nakba, when 700,000 Palestinians were forced from their homes. Early on, Italy, like much of Europe, was cautious but pragmatic, building ties with Israel for trade and security while trying to stay neutral in the Middle East. By the 1980s, Italy was selling arms to Israel, profiting off a state already flexing its military muscle against Palestinians and neighbours like Lebanon, where Israel's 1982 invasion left thousands of dead, mostly civilians. It was a cosy setup. Italy played the "we're just doing business" card, ignoring how those weapons fueled Palestinian suffering. Meanwhile, Italy's leftist movements and public often rallied for Palestine, holding protests against Israel's occupation and apartheid-like policies, which kept some pressure on Rome to not get too chummy with Tel Aviv. Fast forward to the 2000s, and things got tighter under leaders like Silvio Berlusconi, a big Netanyahu fanboy. Berlusconi's government ramped up defense deals and cultural exchanges, brushing off Israel's relentless settlement expansion in the West Bank and brutal assaults on Gaza, like the 2008-2009 war that killed over 1,400 Palestinians, mostly non-combatants. It was like Italy was saying, sure, keep bulldozing Palestinian homes, we'll still trade. Netanyahu, with his hawkish vision of endless control over Palestinian land, thrived on this kind of Western complacency. Italy's complicity, through arms sales and diplomatic silence, helped prop up Israel's occupation while Palestinians faced checkpoints, starvation, and bombed-out schools. Looking back, Italy's relationship with Israel has been a shameful dance of convenience, with Rome often turning a blind eye to Palestinian pain for the sake of trade and geopolitics. Netanyahu's reign, marked by settler violence and Gaza's destruction, has only made this clearer. Italy's recent steps, criticizing Israel's actions and pushing for Palestinian statehood, show a growing unease with being complicit in what many call a genocide. Palestinians, enduring decades of dispossession and now facing famine under Israel's bombs, deserve more than Italy's half-measures. Meloni's not a hero here, but her pivot against Netanyahu's madness is a small nod to the justice Palestine has been denied for too long.